Hello, family. This is day 74 of our Reading Through the Bible Together in a Year series. Today we're still in the book of Judges or Shophatim. Today we're hitting 16 through 18, those chapters. And where we're at in the story is that we're in the sixth main story of the Judges, and we're in the judge Samson's story. And we don't always think about Samson as being a ruler of Israel. We just kind of think of him as a Hercules figure in the Bible. But he was a ruler of Israel, a warrior type figure who was wiping out Philistines and bringing his people out, bringing the Israelites out of their oppression in that time. But we also know that Samson is not a good figure. He's not a good human being. He's not a great person. The three things that are the Nazirite vow is don't drink wine, don't touch anything undead, not undead, that's a zombie. Don't touch anything unclean, so dead things would count. You can't touch dead things. And don't ever shave your hair. And the only thing he really pays attention to is he keeps his hair long. But he's getting plastered. He's sleeping with all kinds of women. He's doing what he wants. He's eating out of the dead lion, right? He's not really fulfilling the Nazirite vow. But he still hasn't cut his hair until today. So let's see how that story plays out today. Shimshon went to Gaza and saw there a prostitute and went into her. The Gazites were told, "Shimshon is here." They surrounded him and laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all the night, saying, "Wait until morning light, then we will kill him." Shimshon lay until midnight, then arose at midnight and took hold of the doors of the gate of the city with the two posts, and plucked them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders, and carried them up to the top of the mountain that is before Hebron. It came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, "Entice him, and see in which his great strength lies, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver." Delilah said to Shimshon, "Please tell me where your great strength lies, and what you might be bound to afflict you." Shimshon said to her, "If they bind me with 7 green cords that were never dried, then shall I become weak, and be as another man." Then the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 green cords which had not been dried, and she bound him with them. Now she had an ambush waiting in the inner room. She said to him, "The Philistines are on you, Shimshon." He broke the cords as flax thread is broken when it touches the fire. So his strength was not known. Delilah said to Shimshon, "Behold, you have mocked me and told me lies. Now please tell me how you might be bound." He said to her, "If they only bind me with new ropes with which no work has been done, then I will become weak and be as another man." So Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them, then said to him, "The Philistines are on you, Shimshon." The ambush was waiting in the inner room. He broke them off his arms like a thread. Delilah said to Shimshon, "Until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me with what you might be bound." He said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the fabric on the loom." She fastened it with the pin and said to him, "The Philistines are on you, Shimshon." He awakened out of his sleep and plucked away the pin of the beam and the fabric. She said to him, "How can you say, 'I love you,' when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies." When she pressed him daily with her words and urged him, his soul was troubled to death. He told her all his heart and said to her, "No razor has ever come on my head, for I have been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If I am shaved, then my strength will go from me, and I will become weak, and be like any other man." When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, "Come up this once, for he has told me all his heart." Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hand. She made him sleep on her knees, and she called for a man and shaved off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. She said, "The Philistines are upon you, Shimshon." He awoke out of his sleep and said, "I will go out as at other times and shake myself free." But he didn't know that Yahweh had departed from him. The Philistines laid hold on him and put out his eyes, and they brought him down to Gaza and bound him with fetters of bronze, and he ground at the mill in the prison. However, the hair of his head began to grow again after he was shaved. The lords of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to rejoice, for they said, "Our God has delivered Shimshon, our enemy, into our hand." When the people saw him, they praised their God, for they said, Our God has delivered our enemy and the destroyer of our country, who has slain many of us, into our hand. When their hearts were merry, they said, Call for Shimshon, that he may entertain us. They called for Shimshon out of the prison, and he performed before them. They set him between the pillars, and Shimshon said to the boy who held him by the hand, Allow me to feel the pillars on which the house rests, that I may lean on them. Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistines were there. And there were on the roof about 3,000 men and women, who saw while Shimshon performed. Shimshon called to Yahweh and said, Lord Yahweh, remember me, please, and strengthen me. Please only this once, God, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Shimshon took hold of the 2 middle pillars on which the house rested and leaned on them, the one with his right hand and the other with his left. Shimshon said, Let me die with the Philistines. He bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell on the lords and on all the people who were in it. So the dead that he killed at his death were more than those who he killed in his life. Then his brothers and all the house of his father came down and took him, and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the burial site of Manoach, his father. He judged Yisrael 20 years. There was a man of the hill country of Ephraim named Michaiah. He said to his mother, The 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse, and also spoke it in my ears, behold, the silver is with me. I took it. His mother said, May Yahweh bless my son. He restored the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother. Then his mother said, I most certainly dedicate this silver to Yahweh from my hand for my son, to make a carved image and a molten image. Now therefore I will restore it to you. When he restored the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave them to a silversmith, who made a carved image and a molten image out of it. It was in the house of Michaiah. The man Michaiah had a house of gods, and he made an ephod and teraphim, and consecrated one of his sons, who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did that which was right in his own eyes. There was a young man out of Bethlehem, Yehuda, of the family of Yehuda, who was a Levite, and he lived there. The man departed out of the city, out of Bethlehem, Yehuda, to live where he could find a place, and he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Michaiah, as he traveled. Michaiah said to him, Where did you come from? He said to him, I am a Levite of Bethlehem, Yehuda, and I am looking for a place to live. Michaiah said to him, Dwell with me, and be to me a father and a priest, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver per year, a suit of clothing, and your food. So the Levite went in. The Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man was to him as one of his sons. Michaiah consecrated the Levite, and the young man became his priest, and was in the house of Michaiah. Then Michaiah said, Now I know that Yahweh will do good to me, since I have a Levite as my priest. In those days there was no king in Israel. In those days the tribe of the Danites sought an inheritance to dwell in, for to that day their inheritance had not fallen to them among the tribes of Israel. The children of Dan sent 5 men of their family from their whole number, men of valor, from Zoar and from Eshtaol, to spy out the land and to search it. They said to them, Go, explore the land. They came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Michaiah, and lodged there. When they were by the house of Michaiah, they knew the voice of the young man the Levite. So they went over there and said to him, Who brought you here? What do you do in this place? What do you have here? He said to them, Thus and thus has Michaiah dealt with me, and he has hired me, and I have become his priest. They said to him, Please ask counsel of God, that we may know whether our way which we go shall be prosperous. The priest said to him, Go in peace. Your way in which you go is before Yahweh. Then the 5 men departed and came to Laish, and saw the people who were there, how they lived in safety, in the way of the Sidonians, quiet and secure. For there was no one in the land possessing authority, that might put them to shame in anything, and they were far from the Sidonians, and had no dealings with anyone else. They came to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol, and their brothers asked them, What did you say? They said, Arise, and let's go up against them, for we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. Do you stand still? Don't be slothful to go and to enter in to possess the land. When you go, you will come to an unsuspecting people, and the land is large. For God has given it into your hand, a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth. The family of the Danites set out from Zorah and Eshtaol with 600 men armed with weapons of war. They went up and encamped in Kiriath Ye'arim in Yehuda. Therefore they call that place Machane Dan to this day. Behold, it is behind Kiriath Ye'arim. They passed from there to the hill country of Ephraim and came to the house of Mechayahu. Then the 5 men who went to spy out the countries of Laish answered and said to their brothers, Do you know that there is in these houses an ephod and teraphim and a carved image and a molten image? Now therefore consider what you have to do. They went over there and came to the house of the young Levite man, even to the house of Mechayahu, and asked him how he was doing. The 600 men armed with their weapons of war, who were of the children of Dan, stood by the entrance of the gate. The 5 men who went to spy out the land went up and came in there and took the engraved image, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image. And the priest stood by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with the weapons of war. When these went into Mechayahu's house and took the engraved image, the ephod, the teraphim, and the molten image, the priest said to them, What are you doing? They said to him, Hold your peace, put your hand on your mouth, and go with us. Be a father and a priest to us. Is it better for you to be a priest to the house of one man, or to be a priest to a tribe and a family in Israel? The priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod, the teraphim, and the engraved image, and went with the people. So they turned and departed, and put the little ones, the livestock, and the goods before them. When they were a good way from the house of Mechayahu, the men who were in the houses near Mechayahu's house gathered together, and overtook the children of Dan. As they called to the children of Dan, they turned their faces and said to Mechayahu, What ails you that you have come with such a company? He said, You have taken away my gods which I made, and the priest, and have gone away. What more do I have? How can you ask me what ails you? The children of Dan said to him, Don't let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall on you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household. The children of Dan went their way, and when Mechayahu saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. They took that which Mechayahu had made, and the priest whom he had, and came to Laish, to a people quiet and unsuspecting, and struck them with the edge of the sword. Then they burned the city with fire. There was no deliverer, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no dealings with anyone else, and it was in the valley that lies by Beit Rachov. They built the city and lived in it. They called the name of that city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born to Israel. However, the name of the city used to be Laish. The children of Dan set up for themselves the engraved image, and Yonatan, the son of Gershom, the son of Moshe, and his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up for themselves Mechayahu's engraved image, which he made, and it remained all the time that God's house was in Shiloh. So the end of Samson, and what we've seen from Samson so far is that, or basically through the entire story of Samson, is that something bad happens to him, and then he reacts with vengeance on the people who did it to him, like hugely, way more than he should. It's, you know, the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand, limb for limb, like that law from God in the Pentateuch or the Torah. You know, Samson's totally out of the box on that, right? They give his wife to somebody else, and he lights all their fields on fire, and and it, right, that's like destroying the food for hundreds of people, you know, and different things like that. And I mean, we get to that culmination point in the story when Samson's head has been shaved, he loses his strength, they gouge out his eyes. And at the end of the story, when he regains his strength, right, the Spirit of God falls on him once more. He regains his strength so that he can kill over 3,000 Philistines by bringing down the building on top of himself, sacrificing his own life in this process. But the reason that he asks Yahweh, give me my strength so that I may take my vengeance on the Philistines for taking my 2 eyes. It's just like he is the embodiment of vengeance and over the top, not keeping, it's not righteous, right? He's not being just. If they take out his eyes, he takes out 2 eyes. Like, that's kind of what the balancing of the scales does. But everything that happens to him, he does 100-fold and attacks and is brutal. And that's like part of who the character of Samson is. Now, God used that person, Samson, to get rid of the Philistines and wipe out their lords and their leaders and And so, like, the evil person can be used for good. But as we continue on in this book of Judges for today, we get to this story about Michaiah or Micah, right? And Michaiah and his Levite priest, and building a idol for him to worship, his own personal idol and his own personal priest, and then that gets stolen by the tribe of Dan because Dan is still looking for a place to live. And they see this unsuspecting town who's at peace, and they're not doing anything bad, and they have no contracts with bigger nations, and then Dan just like burns the place to the ground and wipes everybody out. It's just like, it's supposed to be bad. We're seeing Israel just over and over again get worse and worse and just become might makes right like anybody else. And it's bad. And we're supposed to know that it's bad. We're supposed to see that it's bad. The book of Judges is disturbing, but it's because we're supposed to be disturbed by it, not because we're supposed to look at it with, oh, that was a good idea for them to do, or, oh, Samson, what a great figure to imitate. No. We're supposed to see them in this bad light as they turn further and further away from Yahweh and who Yahweh's character is, and how they originally were supposed to be a light to the nations, but they just become Canaanites, essentially. So that's where we're at, and we'll see how it goes tomorrow. But as for the rest of today, I hope that it is a wonderful day.